Well, Oakley dokley, it's Wheelchair Wednesday, where I like to take a little bit of time and talk about things that are relevant to people in wheelchairs. If you're new here, my name is Deb, and this is my channel, All Abilities Homestead, where I am doing life from a wheelchair and trying to encourage and inspire other people in wheelchairs to lead productive lives as well. Today, I would like to talk about relationships. One of the most challenging things about being in a wheelchair is dating, marriage, and sexuality. The first conference that I was ever asked to speak at more than 40 years ago, the topic was on the sexuality of the disabled. I'm not going to get into details here as far as sex is concerned, because I don't know what all ages are watching these videos. But let's just say that people with disabilities, whether it's a wheelchair or something else, crave physical intimacy as much as anybody else does. Possibly even more, because, and when I say physical intimacy, I'm not really saying that it has to be sex. Hugs, holding hands. Oftentimes when you have a disability, people will keep their distance, whether they're afraid that they're going to hurt you by hugging you, or whatever their reasons are. So hopefully they don't think it's contagious. But in grad school, I did my paper on shaking hands, and if shaking hands was even a thing anymore, if people still did that. Because as a person with a disability, very few people shake my hand. I think they see my hands and they're worried they're going to hurt me or something like that. And so from my perspective, nobody shakes hands anymore. What I found out from my research paper is, yes, they do. They just don't shake hands with people with disabilities. So that carries out into a whole lot of other areas too. You don't get as many hugs. My grandkids hug me, but very few other hugs or pats on the back or anything like that. People just really keep their distance when you're in a wheelchair. When it comes to relationships, again, it's very hard to build a relationship when you're in a wheelchair, especially as a female. I think female are ingrained from their time that they're young to be caretakers and to make that effort. Men, not so much. So oftentimes you'll see relationships where the male is the one with the disability or in a wheelchair and has a normal family and sometimes even really attractive wives. You don't see it very often in the reverse. You don't see very many women in wheelchairs who have supportive and caring husbands. I've been married twice, and both times I was in a remission at the time that I met my spouse, and when we were dating, everything was great. I was walking, I was not in a wheelchair. And in both cases, it was connected to pregnancy. The hormonal changes of pregnancy caused a flare-up again. And so even though before we ever got married, I had explained all of the possibilities, everything that could possibly go wrong, they kept saying they were okay with it. And then once it actually happened and I was using a wheelchair and I was not able to keep the house clean as much as I did before, or had days when I had problems just getting out of bed, suddenly they found other women and had affairs, and the marriages just didn't last. So now, as a single person and in the wheelchair, it's even harder to date, because I find that oftentimes the men that are willing to approach me have issues of their own, whether they're alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever. I guess they feel like I can't do any better than them, and so they will approach me to go out on dates. I'm better off alone than being that desperate for just anybody. Same thing along the lines of sex. People with disabilities do crave physical intimacy. However, they don't crave someone who thinks that they are doing you a favor, that you just must not get very many offers, and therefore they're doing you a favor if they offer to sleep with you. And no, you're not doing me a favor. I have had 6 pregnancies, 6 high-risk pregnancies, and 3 live births. So obviously, sex is a thing. I guess the point of this video is mostly to make you aware that just because someone is disabled does not make them asexual or not interested at all. There's just a few more challenges involved in maintaining a relationship and finding, I guess, quality people that can look past a wheelchair and not see it as a major thing. I would encourage you, if you are in a wheelchair, be upfront about your limitations from the beginning. I mean, don't hold off. If you're on a dating site, put it in your profile, because it's better to know up front if someone's going to have an issue with it than it is to wait until you're showing up to meet someone and then have them surprised that there's a wheelchair. There are some dating websites that are specifically for people with disabilities, but I will tell you from my personal experience that it's hard enough having one person in a wheelchair. Dating somebody else who's also in a wheelchair is not real easy either, because vehicle situations don't always allow for 2 wheelchairs in one wheelchair van. If you have different types of limitations, sometimes you need someone who's able-bodied to be able to reach stuff off the top shelf, or to be able to teamwork to get things done. I'm not saying you can't have a relationship. I'm just saying it's a little more challenging. And to be honest up front and really make sure that person knows what they're getting into before you jump into a marriage or before you jump into even living together, because people with wheelchairs in general are not transient by nature. It's very hard to find a place to live that is wheelchair accessible. So if things don't work out, it's very hard to break up. So that's my topic today, is wheelchairs and relationships. If you have any input on this, if you're in a wheelchair and you've had issues dating, or you found solutions to dating, please share that in the comments, because I'd like to know what you've done to make it work. And if you got a single brother, send him my way. Just kidding. I'm not really looking that hard. But anyway, have a great day, and I will see you next week.